If I had one last chance to say the things I never did, maybe it would begin like this. No one ever told me this part would be the loudest. Not the beginning, not the middle, not the rise or the fall, but the part where everything slows down, where people stop calling, where the house stays too quiet, where the mirror no longer asks questions, just waits. They never told me that regret doesn't scream. It whispers at night when the world is silent, when the weight of what you didn't say finally becomes heavier than anything you ever did. I'm not here to give you advice. I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm here because I've lived long enough to know the difference between what matters and what never did. And I've made enough mistakes to recognize the ones I can't fix and the ones you still can. This isn't a story about success or glory or legacy. It's about what happens when you finally sit still long enough to hear the truth knocking at the back door of your soul. It's about the people I lost because I was too proud to say, I need you. It's about the things I held on to because letting go felt like weakness until it became the only way to stay alive inside. It's about the calls I never made, the letters I never sent, the hugs I never returned because I thought I had time. But I didn't, and neither do you, not in the way you think. So if you came here looking for drama, for flash, for a tidy, happy ending, you won't find it. What you'll find is something more dangerous. Truth, raw, unfiltered, uncomfortable, but maybe healing. This is the story of a man who waited too long to say what mattered. And this is everything I wish someone had told me before it was almost too late. Are you listening? Then sit down. Breathe. This is for you. The silence that cost me everything. No one warns you that silence doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in, slow, comfortable, deceptively gentle, like a soft fog that swallows the road before you realize you've gone blind. It begins with small things, a message you decide not to send, a phone call you tell yourself can wait, a birthday forgotten, not because you didn't care, but because caring meant remembering, and remembering meant hurting. That's how I lost him, not in a fight, not with fists or betrayal, but in the slow erosion of things left unsaid. We were brothers, not by blood, but by the kind of bond that only forms when someone sees you at your worst and stays anyway. We were chaos and comfort, beer bottles and long walks, midnight conversations about dreams too big for our hometown. He knew my mother's favorite recipe. I knew the scar on his knee came from a dare gone wrong when he was 12. We built 1,000 memories, but it took just one moment to unravel it all. It wasn't even a big moment. That's the part I still can't forgive myself for. One misinterpreted comment, one defensive reply, one ego too proud to bend, one silence that stretched into years. I told myself he'd call. He told himself I didn't care, and so we waited. Two grown men, both hurting, both pretending they were fine. Time passed like it always does when you're not paying attention, and suddenly it had been 5 years since we spoke. Then 10. Then I heard he was sick, stage 4. No treatment, no miracle, just time. Except this time it wasn't endless. It had a number, a countdown, an expiration date. I stared at my phone for 2 days. I wrote the message. deleted it, wrote it again, let it sit unsent. What would I say? Sorry, I vanished. Sorry, I let a decade slip through our fingers like dust. What if he didn't want to hear from me? What if my voice was more salt than healing? On the third day I called. 3 rings, voicemail. Hey, my voice cracked on the first syllable. It's been a while, too long. I don't know if you want to hear from me, but if you do, if there's still space in your world, I'd like to sit with you. No expectations. Just 2 old fools and a few years to fill, or even just a few minutes. I miss you. I hung up and sat in the silence. 2 weeks later, he was gone. No return call, no final word, no miracle. And just like that, it was too late. I didn't cry at the funeral. I stood there surrounded by people who never knew what we were to each other. They said things like, he was a good man, he'll be missed, as if that could encompass the fire and laughter that once lived between us. They didn't know the version of him that snuck snacks into movie theaters or wrote letters to his future self on New Year's Eve. They didn't know he once gave me his last $20 because my rent was due and I hadn't eaten in 2 days. They didn't know the man I lost, but I did, and I let him go long before death did. You think silence protects you, that it keeps the hurt at bay. But silence isn't a shield. It's a slow poison. Every unspoken word, every missed moment, every apology swallowed becomes a weight. You don't feel it at first. At 30, you still believe there's time. At 40, you start forgetting the sound of their voice. At 50, you flinch when someone says their name. At 60, you wonder if they would have forgiven you. At 70, all you have left is a voicemail you play once a year just to feel something. If you're listening to this and someone you love is drifting away, not in anger, but in silence, call them, text them, show up. Not because it'll fix everything, not because it guarantees closure, but because you'll never have to sit where I'm sitting now, wondering what could have been saved if you had just spoken sooner. Silence stole one of the greatest friendships of my life. Don't let it take yours. The call I never made. I still remember the sound of the dial tone. It rang 3 times, then silence, then voicemail. I don't remember the exact words I left. Grief has a way of blurring the edges, but I remember how my voice shook. There was so much I wanted to say. So many doors I wanted to reopen. So many wounds I wanted to clean before they turned to scars. But when the tone beeped, all I could manage was a few broken syllables and a trembling hope that maybe he would call back. He didn't. 2 weeks later, he was gone. That's the part that haunts me. Not that he died, not even that we left things unfinished, but that the call I finally made came too late. For years I told myself there would be time to make it right, time to let the anger fade, time to speak with softness instead of pride. But time doesn't wait for our readiness. It doesn't care if you've rehearsed your apology. It doesn't care if you're scared. It doesn't care if you meant to call next week. Time just moves forward, unforgiving. And if you're not moving with it, if you're standing still, trapped in indecision, you don't realize you've been left behind until you're staring at a gravestone, wondering what their voice would have sounded like if they had answered one last time. I used to play that voicemail over and over, Not because I loved hearing my own voice, I hated it actually, but because it was the only proof I had that I had tried, that I had finally reached for something after years of pulling away, that in the end I hadn't been too proud to show up. But there's a cruel irony in that, because even though I tried, it wasn't enough, because trying too late feels like not trying at all. You think you'll be the exception? You think your story will have a dramatic reconciliation, one of those movie moments where someone shows up just before it's too late and everything is forgiven in a teary embrace. But real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the last chance already passed, and you didn't even hear it go. You were too busy being right, too busy being stubborn, too busy pretending you weren't hurting. And by the time you're ready, the other person is gone, and you're left holding a phone that doesn't ring anymore. After the funeral, I sat in my car for hours. Couldn't drive, couldn't think. I kept replaying all the moments I could have reached out, all the birthdays I ignored, all the holidays where I thought, maybe next year. I remembered the first time we met. Two awkward kids at orientation, neither of us knowing anyone, so we stuck together out of survival. And somehow, that turned into decades of memories. But none of those memories showed up that day. Only the silence did. Loud, suffocating, final. I wish I could say the voicemail was the beginning of my healing, that it gave me peace, that just by reaching out, I found closure. But the truth is, I didn't want closure. I wanted him. I wanted a second chance. I wanted to sit across from him and say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I missed you every day, but I was too afraid to say it. But silence doesn't grant second chances, and death doesn't answer voicemails. People always ask, is it worth reaching out if you're not sure they'll respond? Yes, 1,000 times yes, because even if they don't answer, you'll know you tried, and that knowing that you didn't let your fear or pride win will matter more than you can imagine when the dust settles. There's a moment in every life where the call you didn't make hurts more than any conversation you were scared to have. So if someone's name just floated into your mind, don't push it away. Don't wait for the perfect words. Don't wait for the apology to feel polished. Just call, just write, just speak. Even if it's messy, even if your voice shakes, even if they don't pick up. Because the call you never make will echo in your heart far longer than the silence ever did. The price of pride. Pride is a strange thing. It makes you feel taller, even when you're shrinking inside. It tells you you're winning even as you lose everything that ever mattered. For most of my life, I thought pride was strength, that staying silent meant power, that walking away meant dignity. But it wasn't strength. It was fear dressed up in expensive armor, and it cost me more than money ever could. It cost me moments, people, peace. I remember sitting in my living room one night, early 40s, career taking off, name finally being recognized, and realizing there was no one left to call. Not because they had left me, but because I had made it impossible to stay. I demanded loyalty, but rarely offered forgiveness. I expected understanding, but never gave vulnerability. I wanted to be admired, not known, because to be known was to be exposed. And I couldn't bear the thought of someone seeing my cracks. So instead, I built walls. Tall ones, thick ones, the kind you think keep danger out until you realize they keep everything out, including love. The worst part, pride makes you believe you're always justified. Every grudge I held, I had a reason for. Every silence I maintained, I could explain. Every apology I never gave, I had a defense ready. But none of those reasons stood beside me when I buried my best friend. None of them whispered, "You did the right thing," as I listened to strangers speak at his funeral while I stood in the back, unseen, uninvited, unhealed. Pride was loud in life, but in death, it had nothing left to say. I started thinking about all the relationships pride had taken from me. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 12 years over a comment made during dinner. An old business partner who got credit for an idea I helped build. I wanted recognition, so I walked, burned the bridge, and told myself I had integrity. But it wasn't integrity. It was ego, dressed in righteousness. We always talk about forgiveness as something soft, as weakness, as a surrender. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness is not giving in. It's stepping up. It's choosing your peace over your pride. It's deciding that being right isn't worth being alone. Because the truth is, no one gets through this life clean. We all say the wrong thing. We all mess up. We all hurt someone who didn't deserve it. The difference between those who die full of regret and those who leave peacefully is not perfection. It's permission. Permission to be wrong. Permission to say, "I'm sorry." Permission to lower the shield and show someone who you really are underneath the performance. I wish I had learned this sooner. I wish I had known that softness is not weakness, that silence is not power, that walking away may feel strong, but staying and speaking with honesty, that is the bravest thing you'll ever do. But I didn't, so I lost people, not with a bang, but with slow, deliberate distance, and I told myself I was okay with it, until I wasn't. Until the nights got too quiet, until the birthdays passed without calls, until I realized that no one knew me anymore, not really, because I had never let them. Pride gave me a lot. It gave me success, reputation, respect, but it didn't give me what mattered. It didn't give me warmth. It didn't give me connection. It didn't hold my hand when the doctor gave me bad news. It didn't sit beside me when the house was too empty for too long. It just sat quietly in the corner, cold quiet, unmoved. If you're listening to this and you're holding on to pride like it's armor, ask yourself, what are you protecting? And is it worth what you're losing? Because one day you'll look around and realize that the people who truly loved you weren't looking for perfection. They were just waiting for permission to see the real you, and you were too busy pretending you didn't need them. Don't make that mistake. Pride will win the battle, but it will lose the war. The mirror that told the truth. You don't recognize the moment you lose yourself until a stranger in the mirror finally asks, "Who are you?" I don't remember what day it was. It wasn't an anniversary or a birthday or a holiday. It was just an ordinary morning. Coffee gone cold, news on mute, silence hanging in the corners of the room like dust. And for some reason, I looked in the mirror, not just glanced, not just checked if my shirt was tucked in. I looked, really looked, and what I saw wasn't me. At least not the me I remembered. There's something haunting about realizing you no longer recognize your own eyes. They were mine, sure, but hollow. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, my reflection didn't glare. It didn't judge. It just stared back with quiet disappointment, not at the wrinkles, not at the gray, not at the sagging skin or the thinning hair, but at something much deeper, something missing. Presence, clarity, self. That was the day I realized I hadn't truly looked at myself in decades. I'd looked at roles, father, provider, man. I'd looked at performance, how I showed up for others, what they thought of me, what I built. I'd even looked at shadows, regrets, losses, the people who left. But I hadn't looked at me. And what I saw that morning wasn't a man full of pride and legacy. It was a man full of excuses. Excuses for why he didn't say, "I love you" more. Why he let so many people drift away. Why he chased achievement instead of connection. It was the face of a man who had spent more time being right than being real. I sat down right there on the floor of the bathroom. Didn't cry, didn't talk, just sat for over an hour trying to remember when the shift happened. When did I become someone who stopped showing up fully? When did I start hiding behind busyness and pride? When did I decide that pretending was safer than presence? And why had I never noticed that I was disappearing from my own life? The truth is, you don't lose yourself in a moment. It's slow, it's subtle, it's silent. It's saying yes when you meant no. It's staying quiet to keep the peace. It's doing what's expected instead of what's true. And by the time you realize you're not whole, you've already forgotten what wholeness felt like. I used to believe mirrors were for vanity, but that day mine became a confessional. I looked into those weary eyes and said, "I'm sorry." Not to anyone else, not to the people I hurt. That would come later. This time, it was to the man inside the mirror, to the version of me who had dreams once, who loved freely, who danced badly and laughed too loud and believed in second chances, to the boy who grew up learning how to survive, but never how to feel, to the man who thought being tough meant being alone. "I'm sorry," I whispered again, "for abandoning you, for shutting you down, for pretending you weren't there." Something shifted, not like a light switch, not instant peace, but a crack in the wall I had built around myself. And through it, a little bit of breath, the kind of breath that says, "You're still in there. You're still worth coming back for." From that day forward, I made a decision. No more pretending, no more posturing, no more hiding from the man in the mirror. If he looked tired, I'd rest. If he looked sad, I'd cry. If he looked like he needed help, I'd ask for it. Because how can you be honest with the world if you're still lying to yourself? Some people find their awakening on a mountain, some in a therapist's office, some after a tragedy. Me, I found mine on a quiet morning in an old mirror on a floor I hadn't cleaned in weeks. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And sometimes real is enough. If you're listening and you haven't looked in the mirror lately, really look, try it. Not to check your face, not to fix your hair, but to ask one simple question: are you still in there? If the answer is no, don't panic. Just sit, breathe, and begin again. Because the person you used to be isn't gone. They're just waiting for you to come home. The long road to forgiving myself. The hardest person to forgive isn't the one who hurt you. It's the one who let it happen. It's you. After the mirror came the silence. Not the kind I was used to. not the silence of unspoken words or people who stopped calling. This one was different. It wasn't empty. It was honest, uncomfortable, real. I sat in that silence for days. No TV, no phone, no distractions. Just me and the weight of everything I hadn't said to others, and more importantly, to myself. We often talk about forgiving others, how brave it is, how noble. But no one teaches us how to forgive ourselves. No one tells you how heavy it is to carry shame, the kind that doesn't come from what others did to you, but from what you allowed, what you ignored, what you couldn't stop. The shame of being complicit in your own unhappiness. The shame of knowing better, but doing it anyway. The shame of watching someone walk away because you refused to bend when all they wanted was to be let in.